Hey guys, Steve here. Today I gotta look at the T-22 for you. It's a Tier 4 German destroyer. It's on the map Archipelago. Domination mode game. Here's my build. I'm currently working with Bay. I'm still experimenting with a lot of different ideas with Bay. And I've been talking to Salty Chaka. He's one of the mods on my channel, a good supporter of the channel. And he's kind of specialized in these German DDs over the last period. I think he had either all of them or the majority of them unlocked. He was going with a heavy stealth build. Obviously, Bay affects the destroyer concealment, and then using Swirsky as an inspiration. I was inclined to focus more on the guns, but having played around a little bit, I've adopted Swirsky for the moment as the second inspiration. Now, my thinking was the German DDs aren't really that great at concealment anyways, so rather than mitigating kind of the weakness, I was going to focus more on the strengths, which is AP damage, but tiers 2 through 4, there's no sonar, so some of my other ideas were a little bit less applicable, and just having played X amount of games on the ship, I found running the concealment build ended up being probably the best option, and running those two commanders in the setup I have currently ties it with Mutsuki at 5.3. Now that will go down once I get to knock up to level 11 and put Bay or the other concealment commander as the second inspiration. But compared to the other destroyers, it'll be the second most stealthy at the tier using that build. So because of the lack of the sonar, that this is kind of the transition period between the early ships in the line, which are kind of fun ships that shoot torpedoes out of all angles, and the later ships, which are kind of heavily dependent on sonar and are like base objective capture specialists. So this tier is kind of the black sheep of the line, in my opinion, at least how I've, according to my research and the bit of playing that I've been able to do on them so far. But I do have Gurren as the second inspiration now. He affects AP penetration. I do have that because, like the cruisers, German destroyers have the similar ballistic characteristics where the HE is relatively light on the damage and the AP is relatively strong. So anything you can do to increase the penetration, at least in my current way of thinking, is going to help the ship's performance. Torpedoes are serviceable, but they're not great. The range on them, 7.5, 62 knots in the water. That does outrange the detectability, again at 5.3. So compared to the Farragut, which doesn't lacks the ability to stealth torpedo, this is more of a hybrid, but still pretty good gun performance. So that's how I've been playing it. Now early on, you'll notice we were able to capture C. I find the ship's fairly effective at pressure and caps, but it can definitely be outdueled by the USN destroyers. At this point, that's probably your biggest threat, excluding, of course, the ships, the support ships kind of in the second tier behind that, but in terms of one-on-one destroyer threats, that's kind of what you want to look out for. Now here, you're going to be noticing a lot of this game switching back and forth between the HE and the AP shells. Again, the HE is not going to be a great source of damage. We're able to get a torpedo here on the Orion, but anytime a ship's flat broadside you, you're going to be wanting to shoot the AP. You got quick reload time, so you can flip back and forth without any issues. But once he gets into a 45-degree angle there, like the Orion is, there's really no point in shooting AP at it. You might get a pen here or there, but you're going to be a lot more effective. Fire chance low. It's at this tier it's tied with the US, but in general it's the gun characteristics are going to be kind of mirroring the US, like good AP throughout the line, low damage with the HE shells, low fire chance. So this, the name of this game with this ship is just kind of a transition, like we're talking about. But taking some shots at the East Kaza, there's no real threat to us there. Looking on the map, it's really the only ship that could potentially spot us there. But now this Milwaukee comes around here. Now you'll notice it has a FE by the name that stands for Founders Edition. So all these ships that people had at the launch of the game. They've been kind of renamed with this FE designation on it. I'm assuming that's because they're planning on selling a different version of these ships, or one with different camo at least. I don't know. That's just speculation, but that would make the most sense to me there. So you can see these shells, and this is a cruiser by the way, but you can see when it's angled at us like that, they do bounce quite a bit, but now that he's pointed broadside at us, we just punch these right through and do quite a bit of damage there to the Citadel. So these low-tier destroyers, I guess destroyer guns in general, like the flatter the trajectory, i.e. the closer you are to the ships, the more success you're going to have penetrating with these shells. The floatier they get, I still recommend using the AP when they're broadside to you, but you do need to be watching those 4 little indicators on the top right-hand corner of the screen to see what the shells are doing. If they're bouncing, if they're shattering on the armor, then just switch over to HE. There's no point in trying to force a square peg into a round hole. Now here, looking at this, I don't know if someone else was spotting this New York or not. I could have potentially hid behind that island, but I was worried about him becoming undetected, and because he's moving relatively slow and the New York's not the most agile ship, I was planning on torping him here. Obviously we're attempting to torp attack. My 2 options were to kind of bum rush him and, you know, let him shoot me once and, you know, land a coup de grace close range to him. But I decided to pull off. I mean, the game is effectively over, but at this point there's really no reason to get myself killed. And I probably could have survived one close range salvo from this guy, but if he had HE and he caught me flush, you never know. So again, broadside target, we do have the AP loaded. You see Sakaze start shooting at us, he's close range. This ship is not really a threat to us in terms of guns, but we do need to be aware of torps incoming, and you do see launch the first set there. So Japanese destroyers at the lower tiers, they're not going to be very effective at dueling other destroyers close range like that, but potentially, you know, I mean, the torps are going to be the strongest at whatever their tier they're at. The Mutsuki, for instance, hits for 15,000 damage in my build, which would easily one-shot this, so you do want to be careful about that. I'm getting a little careless here trying to get these torps off in the New York. I still got to keep in mind this Isakaze has 3 different salvos of 2 torps, so perhaps I was playing a little loose, not respecting my opponent as well as I should, which is obviously a mistake every time you do that. You can see here the turret traverse, we're combined with the turn radius of the ship, we're having a little bit of trouble catching up to the ship as we go by him. He's able to plug a fairly decent salvo into us there, but once we get turned around, that's not really a problem there. So the turret traverse is not bad. On my build it's 14.6. The Farragut's got 10.7. Mutsuki 18, I cost 18, so kind of middle of the pack here. You're noticing a lot of the stats I'm reading off on the T-22, just kind of middle of the pack. It's not a spectacular ship at anything, it's not really a dog at anything either. So, I mean, accepting the concealment build, it's pretty good in terms of that, but that's how I have it spec'd out. And granted, a lot of people aren't going to have access to the Swirsky, who's the Polish destroyer commander that came with the biscuits. So, again, New York, he's backing up broadside. If he wants to shoot, fine. You know, not a big deal. But you can see, just checking these numbers that pop up every time. I mean, these guns aren't massively powerful, but they're doing decent damage. So you don't want to be hitting in the belt armor, you know, water level, because those are going to shatter. But if you get it up, upper hull, superstructure, you know, start racking up some fair amount of damage doing that, so pretty effective overall. Again, I talked about this ship kind of being a transition. Looking at the rest of the line, I played the Gaidi a fair amount. We'll get a video up on that soon. Looking on the Moss and the Z-23 from my research and talking to people, the trend that I believe for the rest of the line is they're going to be kind of bigger ships. Again, concealment-wise, not the most impressive, but we'll see how those numbers change once I try different builds on them. Perhaps you can spec them out to be somewhat decent with the double concealment build, which is possible. But again, strong AP, kind of weakish HE. The torps throughout the rest of the line are actually going to be the same. And by the way, what I'm doing here is, you see that white kind of rainbow shape in the center? That's the radio location. On Bay, there, one commander per nation has a perk that says show the location of the nearest ship. That's what that is visually. I get a lot of questions about that. But getting back to the torps, these are 13.7 for damage, and those are looking down the line until the Z-23, which gets up to 14,400. But the next two ships, these are the exact same torps. Range and speed gets a little bit better down the line, but again, German destroyers, torps are serviceable, but they're not the highlight of the ship. And the guns tend to be pretty strong if you're able to utilize the AP. What is going to be the highlight of the line, though, is the really powerful sonar. And granted, the UK line does have sonar as well. I believe the Germans is quite a bit better, though, in terms of range and duration and stuff like that. So I just got that unlocked on the guide age, just starting to play around with that. But they're going to be kind of utilizing that classic smoke sonar combination to kind of punish other destroyers that you're able to get in close with and kind of turn the fight in your advantage that way. A couple other things to point out about the T-22. You do have 360-degree turrets in the back there, which provides a lot of flexibility in terms of how you're maneuvering your ship, keeping those guns on target. And that front turret is quite liable to be obstructed. You're going to have to keep an eye on your ship's diagram to see what that one's doing. It's got that really big cabin right behind the turret position, so depending on how your ship's facing, you're going to find that front gun not being in the fight a lot, so keep an eye on that diagram. So let's look at the T-22. Hope you did enjoy it. If you did, please hit the thumbs up. If you're new to the channel, you should consider subscribing. A lot of World Warships coming all the time. Questions for me, comments, leave them below. Love to hear from you guys, and we'll see y'all later. Alright, peace.